Hello and welcome to Kirkcaldy's Heritage and 50 Objects, and once again I am with Alan Mackey. Hello Alan, how are you? And once again I am here with Alan to speak about the next subject. What are we speaking about tonight, Alan?
We are speaking about the Man in the Rock. I don't know how well you know it or the story of it, because you've actually got to be 50 to have actually seen it, and even at that, no, you'd have to be over 50. Anything about it at all?
I know about it from legend, but that's it.
It was and Kirkcaldy has very, very few statues, but this was one not about a Kirkcaldy lad, but one carved by a Kirkcaldy, or to be more precise, a Dysart weaver. Quite an interesting story, and one that we've not just looked at the sculpture or the carving, but we've had a wee look along the whole length of the walk between West Weems and Dysart. That was known as the Lockdown Road or the Low Shore Road, and it was used every day by hundreds of miners, loads of factory girls. It was the real main communication between the two villages.
Yes,
and obviously the miners really constructed it, and the factory girls used it. So that was the story of this path, which had been there for many a long day. But there was a young weaver called John Patterson, a Dysart lad, who was born in 1822. And in 1851, without any training, without any use of tools, he set about carving two faces on the red rocks. There's very little left of the red rocks, but to put it in context, the walk between Dysart and West Weems was not only a way to work or a way to hard toil, but it had some of the most outstanding views over the Firth of Forth at the time. It had the Dubby Braes, the Piper Braes, there was cafes, there was fun, games, and it was it's hard to believe that Dysart was a tourist mecca. It genuinely was. And young John tried his hand at these two faces, and then the minister encouraged him to try something more difficult or more daring, shall we say. And he'd read the poem, The Prisoner of Shillon, written by Lord Byron. That's he of the mad, bad and dangerous to know fame. And he had a shot at his interpretation of The Prisoner. And if you don't know, Bonivard was the prior of St. Victor's in Geneva. And he was chained in a cell or to a pillar for 4 years until he was freed in 1536 by Bernès. And there is a long, lengthy Lord Byron epic, which we are told John wanted to put his interpretation on it, and he spent a whole summer carving out a niche in the red rocks, and he made a fabulous job. He did it all himself, no assistance, bar the chains, strangely enough, where I don't know if you know, but there is a Parrot Coal table and chairs in Kirkcaldy Museum, and a great deal of Parrot Coal sculptures in Weems Castle, and they were done by a chap called Williamson, and Mr. Williamson made the chains for the statue. So it really intrigued people, and they came from miles to see the Man in the Rock. And in the early days it was uncovered, but eventually the Earl of Roslin and Captain Weems put money towards a plinth and bars, and it really did look like a prison cage. And our narrative has got a fair number of photographs of the man embedded in it.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures.
It's absolutely incredible. And as I said to you, I'm probably repeating myself, it brought tourists from miles. It appeared in articles, and every year the Dysart folk were very, very proud of the carving. It got painted. Sometimes it was blue, sometimes flesh coloured. The bars were looked after, but there was one weakness, and that is, it's got to be said, probably it was in the wrong place. I think probably coastal erosion was not on the radar of the thinking of the people at the time. And gradually, over the years, the sea eroded underneath the statue. And the sad thing is that where the statue is It's midway between, as I said, Wemyss and Dysart. There was any number of parishes or councils involved. Wemyss Council, Wemyss Parish Council, Dysart Council, Kirkcaldy District, and nobody really took responsibility. Miners tried to repair the road. Michael Nairn gave money to sort the path out, and there was a lot of effort on voluntary basis to try and save the statue and save the path. But ultimately, the sea had managed to erode 80 yards underneath the carving. The road became dangerous, the pathway fell away, and sad to say, in 1970, the whole thing tumbled into the sea. It's a very disheartening story.
Yeah.
But there's little bits more to it. At the time, the Francis Colliery, which possibly led to the real problems, because when the Francis opened, they started dumping the red and the slag into the sea. That destroyed the braes, it destroyed the beauty to a great degree, but it also started to lift the seabed up the way. Therefore, when the waves were crashing in, they were starting to reach the man, and that was probably one of the main reasons why it happened. But as I say, any number of voluntary and local attempts, and to be fair, some councillors, especially Joseph Westwood, who was a Dysart councillor, became Secretary of State for Scotland, made many attempts to try and save the man, and indeed put a plaque up to him. But as I say, ultimately it tumbled into the sea. But the Francis might have played a part, because the brushers there was an idea to cut the man out of the rock and carry him down to the new townhouse in Kirkcaldy as the statue. But the council at the time, really in a vanity and legacy project, decided to spend £2,000 on what is called the Spirit of Kirkcaldy, or the Sower. And that's that brass statue which stands on the eastern end of the townhouse. And the councillors at the time said, in no time at all, the Sower, or the Spirit of Kirkcaldy, will overtake in the public mind the man in the rock. That's not happened. So it could have been saved. It should have been saved. Could more have been done?
You could argue. You could argue.
The worrying thing is that at one end of the bay we had the man in the rock, and at the other end of the bay we've got Seafield Tower. And even in my lifetime, which possibly is getting longer, but nonetheless, Seafield Tower has, over the years of my lifetime, really started to become really quite alarming. I'll do that again. Over my lifetime, the Seafield Tower is definitely crumbling, and I think one day we might see another historical edifice tumble into the sea, and Kirkcaldy has got precious few of them. So it's a tale of history, and it's a tale of caution about Seafield. But it's been written in a way that we've looked at what's happened on the path, on the roadway, stories about it. For example, in 1901, a worthy obviously had a drink, had been at Kirkcaldy Flower Show, and he fell asleep under the man in the rock. And in the morning, his boots had gone and his coat had been removed during the night. And the newspaper article said the gentlemen in blue are hoping to apprehend the culprits. Horses fell off the end of the cliffs and broke their necks. There's an amazing amount of things happened on that walkway. And we've tried to bring that into the story. But the story is, sadly, about a Dysart man, no training, produced a wonderful carving for many, many years, admired, but allowed to go into dilapidation, ruin, and eventually fell into the sea.
It's quite almost a tragic tale, isn't it?
It's worse than that. The coastal path now is starting to look good again. You can walk along there. You can get from A to B. It's a nice walk. But I didn't do it. But when you read the accounts of the time, that path and the views and the foliage and the fauna were magnificent. It's actually claimed that they were amongst the best views of the Firth of Forth from that walkway. And a lady who had come home from New Zealand, she'd come 13,000 miles back to her home in Desert, to where she'd played as a bairn, and she was reduced to tears by what had happened. And her very words were that New Zealand has earthquakes, but no earthquake could have created the devastation and the disaster of the W. Braes and the Man in the Rock. And
that's something to say, isn't it?
Yes, it's so many people, older people certainly, remembered their childhood, remembered when the Braes were beautiful. When people, there's pictures or photographs, I should say, in our narrative, and you can see the beauty, the cafes, the children playing, and it's all gone.
Mm-hmm.
But sadly, the voices that were raised tended to be the elderly or the older person, because the young don't really have the same interest in history. But the trouble is, or the problem is for them, is they grow old eventually, and they become the ones with the memories, and they're the ones that want to fight to retain the heritage. But in the case of the Man in the Rock, too little, well, in fact, nothing at all, too late, fell into the sea. And let's please not let it repeat itself 50 years later with Seafield Tower. There's got to be something that can be done there.
Definitely. I mean, and I can say for myself, for someone that's not personally seen the Man in the Rock, I know about it. I've never heard about the spirit of Kirkcaldy.
No.
Which is a bit of an interesting viewpoint, I suppose, but you know.
The new town house, when you read the articles on the new town house and the architects speaking about, what it all symbolised and how this spirit of Kirkcaldy, the sower, was the vital part to balance it all. And now I looked at it yesterday in the town square. The thing is green. It's not been cleaned in its 60 years. And if that's the spirit of Kirkcaldy, the council want to be looking with shame at it. But the man's gone. It lives on in the name of the pub. It lives on in photographs. But isn't it a dreadful shame that nothing else was done? Desert people were very, very upset because they believed that had there been a 40-yard bit of Kirkcaldy promenade torn out by the sea, something would have been done. But it created a lot of bad feeling. But those that knew it, those that saw it, they're in their 60s. It's only like Bonnevard and the Prisoner of Chillon. It's just a name now. It's not. There's nothing tangible to support either.
And it's nice in a way that John Patterson has that legacy of just being inspired to create something.
Yeah. We also think, to add insult to injury, as well as the man tumbling into the sea, we think his graveyard's been covered by a playground. At the top of Hot Pot Wynd, or the bottom of Hot Pot Wynd, that was built on a cemetery.
Really?
Oh yes, and where the slides are, that was a cemetery. Now he either lies there or he lies in St Serve's graveyard. We've not quite been able to ascertain because the COVID issue is keeping us, away from being able to ask questions.
Yeah.
But we suspect he is under the play park. So not only is his figure in the sea, he's under a slide, swings, call it what you will. Very sad.
Well,
and there's nothing to him. There's no plaque to say where the man was. There's nothing to say, what happened to it or about him. And I feel there could be something along where the Francis memorials are, or the Dubby. I think there could be something just to say this was the site, and incorporate a photograph into the very good information boards.
Yeah, there's no reason why that couldn't be done. If it's done for other areas and other subjects. So, yeah. I very much look forward to reading about this in the press this week.
Well, it's, as I said to you, it's not just about the man. We started off going to write about the Man in the Rock, but when we realised the significance and the history of the Low Road, or the Lockout Road, we did the whole thing, and the things that have happened there are they're funny. They're some of them are very serious. We feature a drowning of a young lad who was a very good swimmer, went for a swim below the man and got into difficulties. In 18, he died.
Oh, what a shame.
Carried back to Blair Fareham. So there's a lot of things happened, and the man saw a lot. But now, sadly, his eyes are closed.
Oh, that's a shame.
But it's not all bad news. Today on our Kirkcaldy's Heritage of 50 Objects, we've had the 1,000th hit on the website. So we are delighted.
Oh, congratulations! That's amazing.
Well, it's good. I must say, we're really, really pleased with the way it's going, and we've got lots of stories to come, and hopefully people will continue to enjoy them.
Yeah, and we'll look forward to sharing this podcast with them on Thursday evening.